Hi, can you
Hi.
hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about your paper and let me open that up and share it. And that's this paper. Okay, so this is the paper we want to share. So let me make sure that I'm sharing the right screen. And I think it's this one. And move that out of the way. It's not the one I want. Close that. Don't save. It's interesting. Okay, there's the paper. Can you see your paper? Yeah, okay. Okay, so you're right, the Vietnam War was the most painful mistake in modern American history. That may be true, but like I tell all the students, any claim you make, particularly something that's very strong and bold, needs to have a evidence. You need to have evidence to support it, and that evidence is typically a citation of a scholarly source, like the Zinn textbook. I don't know if Howard Zinn in the textbook, he ever makes that statement. Maybe he does. I mean, it's been a while since I've read the book, but and it could well be true when you think about, well, in modern American history. Well, it depends when you define what modern is. And it's a subjective judgment. And what it means, what do you mean by painful? So when you make, and the reason C is when you remind yourself that any claim you make needs to have evidence supporting it in the form of reference to supporting evidence in a scholarly source, like the Zinn book or peer-reviewed journals, then it requires that it will then motivate you to find some kind of statement or some kind of evidence that this is true. So, and then if you can't find scholarly evidence that this is true, or as you think about trying to find scholarly evidence to support this claim, and you realize you can't do it, or it's not clear, like what does painful mean? I mean, and people disagree on these topics, right? I mean, some people say, well, it was a mistake, but probably what was worse for the United States. I can imagine somebody making the argument, no, what was worse for the United States? When the United States didn't join the League of Nations after 1918. And it did not stay actively engaged as a leader in security questions in Europe after World War I, because when the US disengaged from Western Europe after World War I, that made the rise of actors like Mussolini and Hitler more possible. And that was maybe the most difficult mistake that the Americans made in that war, because the Americans left, and because Americans left, this led to increasing conflict among Germans and French and Italians, and regimes that emerged that were ugly, like Mussolini's fascist regime and then Hitler's regime, and then the result was World War II. So you see what you see. I mean, I know what you mean by how I would interpret your statement is it was the most humiliating. It was a nationalist. The United States became motivated by protecting nationalism because of fighting and losing a war, something along those lines. But the point is, you just can't make statements without providing evidence. And I'm curious what would happen if I were to look for some evidence here. Let's see. Let's copy your sentence here, and let me go to where I go typically to do research. I use this database, and I make sure you can see what I'm doing here as I go through these databases. And it's not maybe it's this one here. So you go here, and let's say we go here to basic search, and then we click on peer reviewed. That means a scholarly source. That means academic peers reviewed the article. So let's go here to make just full text, peer reviewed, and let's just copy paste your sentence in here, and let's see what comes up. And nothing comes up. Well, maybe because I didn't specify. So Vietnam War, and full text, painful, since you use that word, and full text, American history, and mistake. And we click here, full text, and we want full text, and we want peer-reviewed, scholarly sources, go like that, and we have 126 results. 126 results, the presidential rhetoric about the Vietnam War since 9/11. That might be something that gives you an indication from the title that this is going to talk about American patriotism and nationalism and pride, which is what I think you mean by painful in your statement. But there's we can try to make it look up humiliation, and I'll put a asterisk on the bottom so it looks up for every word that has that term in it, or humiliating or humiliation. 17 results. So the response of the moderate wing of the civil rights movement to the war in Vietnam. This is what I spent a lot of my time doing, looking for scholarly sources to develop and refine and support my own ideas. And then when I check these sources, I often realize I have to be more specific or modify or refine or change or my point, because I can't find a scholarly source that can confirm or corroborate or support my argument or my claim. Okay, so that's what we do typically, and this is a lot easier with these library databases. And there are other databases like, what's another one? People ask me, what about Google Scholar? Like Google Scholar, let's see if I can find the, this thing is not defaulting to my website, my webpage. Google Scholar, yay, Google Scholar. And so you can use that. And that means that basically Google is searching all of those journal article databases for peer-reviewed articles. It does it for you basically. And based on my history, it's showing me what it thinks I might be interested in. Okay, so if we type your sentence in here, we get 86,900 results. And I do that too. I use this a lot too. What is this? Is this a book or an article? Sometimes they won't let you read it. You have to buy it. But this one I think you can download. This one might be something directly relevant to your sentence there. I have to go back and read it. I haven't read it. Yeah, you can download this PDF file. You can download it because I think it's checking because it says access provided by Catholic University of Korea. So in other words, the library, CUK paid, Catholic University of Korea paid for my access as using my computer on its network for my access to these articles. That's why I can download this article for free. Okay, so back to your paper here. So, and I got to redo the share. Let me go back to here. It says, okay, so I think there you go. The war sparked a huge, so maybe I can highlight that. The war sparked a huge anti-war movement in the United States and abolished the conscription system. The U.S. Congress passed the War Powers Act, which requires asking for the opinions of House Members in the Senate on war acts. And I'm looking here. Okay, so about the Vietnam War, Americans thought it was a terrible tragedy and a war that should never have been fought, which plagued. You can't say Americans. Not all Americans thought that way. Many did, right? So you got to be careful and make sure you write specific, cautious statements. Don't make general statements like the Vietnam War was the most painful mistake in modern history. The most means there's only one, and this is the most painful. There's only one that's most painful. And of course, it's wrong. You can think of other painful, and people will disagree, right? Several social movements in the United States in the 1960s were in an overall rebellion against life in an oppressive and artificial way. As a result of this movement, Americans lost faith in large. And so, of course, your English is excellent. And one of my tasks is to help you polish and refine your English further to make it even better than it already is. And since I'm a native speaker, I can, sort of have a sense of how a native speaker would say these things. So I still understand everything you write. There's no problem there. But, I just want to work with you. And I think that basically to help the students improve their English, it's better if I let the students choose how they want to rewrite it, rather than me tell you how to rewrite it. Let you choose. So that's why I always make two suggestions, and either one's okay. And you can use one, you can throw out the other, you can use both, you can redo whatever you want to do, right? And that idea is that you think about it, and you're more likely to, think and internalize and learn from that. So several social movements, or as a result of this movement, Americans lost faith in large establishment or establishment authority. So which one do you prefer? Either one's okay. You don't have to, you're not, it's up to you. You can change your mind later.
I'm not sure, no.
Okay. And that should be, and instead they came to believe that they could find answers on their own. In this background, the traditional education method of teaching to obey patriotism began to be reviewed. And so you gave a footnote there on page 42, and I checked and I said, I just checked. I don't really see how what's on page 536 and 39 in the book that I have would for this reason, I asked, it's for this reason I'm asking students to write specific page numbers, because I want you to use specific pieces of information rather than your impression. Like I read Howard Zinn and I got a sense that students were rebelling against traditional educational method. Well, that might be true, but I don't think that's really clear that Howard Zinn is arguing that on page 536 to 39. And I think I understand what you're trying to say, but for this reason, I want students to give the specific page number because I want them to make specific statements and support those specific statements with specific information. Okay. So I said, what you have written are your personal impressions from reading pages 536 to 9, rather than any specific information that's on. I think you're right. I think you're correct. But you have to be careful about when you make source citations, that the source citations clearly support to the reader, that they clearly support your argument, so that the reader can go back and check the source that you're citing and confirm that, oh yeah. Okay. So the credibility of the U.S. government declined in the early 1970s, and Watergate greatly contributed to the system's loss of trust. Yeah, I think that's generally true. Okay. So you're going to argue. You're going to try to argue here how the rise of Let's remind ourselves what the final exam was. So if I go to U.S. history and I look up final exam, click there, and it says, and share the screen again, and it says, here it is. It says, analyze the ways in which the events in the 1970s diminished American economic power, international influence, and challenged Americans' confidence in both. How did these events and trends contribute to the resurgence of conservatism in American politics and government? How do these changes relate to the election of Donald Trump and making America great again? So you're going to talk about the decline in America's economic power and influence and challenged American confidence. And so far, what you've done in the paper is you've made statements that that's what happened, but you haven't really provided much evidence proving it. Okay. I agree with you, but you need to provide evidence to prove it. Okay. So in the 1970s, Americans felt helpless with inflation and high unemployment. Well, first off, did all of them? You said Americans. Again, that's a very broad general statement. that you can just say that in the 1970s, America experienced higher inflation, higher unemployment. And this, okay, you're not saying that all Americans felt helpless. I mean, I was alive at that time. I don't think I felt helpless. I'm an American. So, you know, this inflation was linked to several crises, okay? And the United States provided Israel with huge amounts of weapons, and the oil prices around the world rose sharply, okay? I mean, you're describing what happened in the 1970s, but I don't see how this is manifesting in a decline of influence and a decline in American confidence. And what's the proof of that decline of confidence? Was it the rise of conservatism? Was it the intensification of American polarization that produced more intense nationalism, combined with the fact that eventually the Soviet Union did disintegrate, and for conservatives like Daniel Flynn, like we covered in the midterm, he said, see, Soviet Union's gone. You know why it's gone? Because we won the Cold War against the supposed Russian version of Nazi Germany. And we won in spite of the feminists, the LGBTQ activists, Howard Zinn, Noam Chomsky, the protesting college students, in spite of their weakness and degeneracy, thanks to Ronald Reagan, thanks to Republican conservatives, including, and thanks also to Richard Nixon, who did what needed to be done, and he sacrificed his career because he did what needed to be done despite the opposition of the wimps and weak and degenerate opponents inside America. He did what was needed to be done, and he's sort of like a Republican Jesus, right? He sacrificed himself for our well-being. And then his sacrifices bore fruit with the Soviet Union going poof. And we lost the Vietnam War, but we lost the Vietnam War because of a mistake of these Democrats and their base. And their base are radicals, leftists. And, you know, I think that needs to be emphasized here. You know, and then there was more humiliation that, you know, when the, in the Iran hostage crisis, the 1970s saw the United States lose the Vietnam War, and then Richard Nixon resigns, and Gerald Ford is his vice president, and Gerald Ford is a Republican who runs for president against Jimmy Carter, and Jimmy Carter beats him in 1976. And Jimmy Carter becomes president, and he says, I'm no longer going to focus on the Cold War. America is not going to focus on the Cold War, which caused that horrible Vietnam War. We're going to focus on human rights and promoting human rights. And we're not going to focus so much on the Soviet Union as a problem. And from the point of view of those conservatives who they saw Jimmy Carter as a fool. And as a result of his foolishness, communism spread, including into North America, with Nicaragua becoming a communist government, falling to a communist government that overthrew the authoritarian, corrupt Somoza family dictatorship in Guatemala, I mean, in Nicaragua, and in Grenada. And then in Africa, communism was expanding in Mozambique and in Angola and in Ethiopia and Somalia. And then the Soviet Union would invade Afghanistan around Christmas 1979. Well, and of course, the American embassy personnel are seized in 1979 and held as hostage 1978 and held as hostage, and Jimmy Carter couldn't get them out. And so all of this produced an overarching sense of humiliation along with the economic problems. And then Ronald Reagan beat Jimmy Carter in the election in 1980 with his phrase, "It's morning in America." And then in 5 years after Ronald Reagan, you know, Ronald Reagan re-escalated, refocused on the Cold War. And, you know, maybe did a lot of bad things, maybe caused lots of death and destruction on the world in focusing on the Cold War. But 5 years later, Gorbachev came to power in Soviet Union and began his reforms. And for somebody like Daniel Flynn, it looks like Gorbachev was a result of Ronald Reagan. that the Soviet Union gave up because they saw that now we've gotten rid of our foolish Jimmy Carter and replaced him with the Republicans that included Ronald Reagan, who was at the same generation as Richard Nixon. And then the Soviet Union would eventually, communism would collapse in Europe and the Soviet Union would disappear. In spite of all of those leftist protesters criticizing the United States and condemning the United States, despite the millions and millions of people that communists have killed in the Soviet Union and in China and in North Korea and other places. And so, yeah, I mean that, and so that's one way by which to appeal to this belief that what the United States won, the belief that supposedly the Americans won the Cold War because of traditional conservative American values. And what are those traditional conservative American values? Those traditional conservative American values are what made America great. And those traditional conservative American values, you know where you can find those traditional conservative American values? You can find them here in the Bible. These are the values that made America great. These are the values that defeated communism and saved the world from Soviet imperialism. These values as interpreted by a moksha, by a minister, not feminists, not gay rights activists, not anti-war protesters, not hippies, not Jimi Hendrix, not the Helen Reddy and I Am Woman. No, these values. And that seemed to be confirmed. And Donald Trump played with that reaction that these values are what made America great. And of course, America changed a lot since the 1950s, particularly since the 1970s. I was born in 1962, so I remember a time where pretty much every American, you didn't need to go to college to get a good job. Let's put it that way. You didn't need to go to college to get a good job. You could get a good job that gave you a middle-class style lifestyle compared to everybody else. You could get a house and a car and have, and you didn't have to go to college. You could just graduate from high school. But then in the 1970s, things began to change. South Korea developed, Japan had recovered from the war, China was growing, Europe was developing, and globalization was happening. And American companies could not compete so effectively. American steel companies, American car companies, they couldn't compete very well with Japanese companies and then later with Korean companies and Brazilian companies. And so you saw that it became more and more, there was more and more income difference between the rich and the poor than there was before. It's become much greater. And for the typical supporter of Donald Trump, not all, but the typical most common type of supporter for Donald Trump, they're looking for explanations. Why is it that I am not able to live as well as my parents compared to everybody else? Why cannot I live as well as my parents did? Or why am I not satisfying my dreams because I see so many other people doing so much better? And they look for reasons, they look for causes. Why is there this problem with drugs? Why is there this problem with crime? Why is it that more and more people need government help and assistance from government welfare programs? And they don't want to hear about globalization, and they don't want to hear about having to adapt to the new global economy where you have to have a college degree and you have to speak foreign languages like you do. No, they don't want to hear that. They want to blame somebody, and they want to blame, and you know what they blame? They blame the 1960s and 70s social movements and the government policies that came from them, to the war, Lyndon Johnson's war on poverty in the 1960s. In addition to his war in Vietnam, he launched a war on poverty and developed new welfare programs. And these supporters of Donald Trump, they say, because we got away from traditional American values in which you rely upon yourself, you rely upon your neighbors, you don't look to big government to solve your problems. but big government expanded. The federal government expanded thanks to the reaction to the social movements of the 1960s and 70s. And as a result, we have the breakdown into traditional American family. We now have a situation where 40% of American babies are born to women who are not married. And we have millions of criminals in jail. And we have drug epidemics and drug use, abuse, and why? And they say it's because we got away from this. And Donald Trump played with that. He used that to the maximum, to get. And so the people that support Donald Trump, they don't just support Donald Trump today in 2021. They love him. They love him. They don't just support him, they love him. It's almost like a cult, right? And they love him because he appears to be like them. Yeah, he's got a college degree, but he didn't really study in college. You know, he got into college because his daddy was rich. Yeah, we understand it. That's traditional in America. And he's not really he's not an intellectual. He studied business administration. He got a degree in business, and he didn't even really study, and he paid somebody to take his tests for him. And you know that America doesn't like intellectuals. America's anti-intellectual society because they tend to associate intellectuals with aristocracy, with Yanban, because in Europe only the Yanban could get educated. And America rejected Europe, right? Rejected the Yanban. And so Donald Trump, and he's a businessman. He's not a professional politician. Big government bad, the state bad. Donald Trump portrayed himself as sort of like an American messiah. He's a traditional, he made himself appear to be some kind of successful billionaire, not a professional politician. And he's going to come in and give expression to these people that particularly are focused on this, who think that the breakdown in of America with more crime, more violence, more drugs, and bigger taxes on people to pay for lazy, irresponsible women and Black people and brown people and white trash. That's what the source of all of our problems. And the fact that Donald Trump won makes these people feel like finally they are respected, because they feel inferior, right? They don't have college education, they don't speak foreign languages, right? So I'm not saying all of them, and they feel like the world is leaving them behind, the globalizing world. And here Donald Trump wins and shows that no, you are still important because I'm still important. I won the election in 2016. So the people that support Donald Trump, as I told you, they love him. But we just have a couple minutes left. I wanted to show something that I've shown to other students in other classes, that January 6th, if I show you this, just to show you this picture that I like to show everybody during the riot in the United States to attack the US Congress to try to make Donald Trump again become president despite the election. You see this protester here is waving the South Vietnam flag, right? And then you see here also on the Congress Capitol building, another flag. And that flag is, let me see if I can call it up. That flag is, yeah, this flag. And I think you can see that. I mean, maybe you can't, but you see this flag. And this flag, you see it all over the United States, this flag, which is a flag that claims that there are still American prisoners of war trapped in Vietnam, left behind by our evil government who got us into that disaster. And in other words, that there are still Americans trapped in Vietnam being held, and our government is lying to us, lying to us, lying about the Vietnam War, lying about everything. And Donald Trump is the only person you can trust because he is not part of that establishment. Okay, we have to stop there. Do you have any questions? If not, I will send you this paper, okay? I'll send it again to you.
Okay.
Okay, so let me go like this, and let me go sent, and then we find your paper, and that's you. So go like this, and I will send you the link to the recording of this session. Okay.
Okay.
Okay.